College basketball fans, welcome to another edition of the College Pride Press Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Kruppel, and we have another very special podcast coming to you this week. We will be previewing the Big Ten and all the ups and downs that will be going out throughout the Midwest. So my name is Brad Kruppel, and we got three great writers back with me today. We got Ryan Dullcamp from Indiana, Sean Bach, an Indiana fan, and then Zach Beeler, who's the just a fair weather fan of every team, it seems like. So I'll let you guys kind of reintroduce yourselves to the crowd, and say a little bit about yourselves. So we'll start off with Zach.
Yeah, I'm Zach. As Brad said, I guess I'm a fair weather fan, but if I was a fair weather fan, I'd think I'd be a pretty crappy one because Purdue is not the team I would choose. But I go to IU. I grew up in West Lafayette, so I've always had more of a Purdue following. At IU, I'm a supply chain management major. I know you guys introduced that last time, but I'm excited to get back with College Pride Press this season.
All right, Sean, What's going on with you?
All right, I'm Sean Bach. I'm a senior in high school in Western Springs, Illinois. I'm looking to go to Indiana next year, hopefully. And since I grew up in Illinois, I was actually a Illini fan until Tom Crean. So go Hoosiers.
Oh, geez. All right, there's going to be a lot to talk about there. Then we'll finish it off with Ryan.
I'm Ryan Dullcamp, sophomore at IU, in accounting, and excited for the season.
All right. Sounds good. So we're going to jump right in here, and we're going to do our conference preview a little bit differently than we did last year. So we're going to go from bottom to top and talk about each team according to last year's standings, and then we're going to talk about whether we think they're going to be higher or lower in the standings at the end of this season. So, of course, we've got to start it off with the big Rutgers, the big R, and their powerhouse over in New York. So, big Rutgers finished the year 7-25, 1-17 in conference games. So, where do you guys think they're going to be this year in terms of players coming and going and in the standings? So we'll let Zach start it off.
Yeah, Rutgers is one of those teams for me that I really don't think I'm not going to have any faith in them moving up in the rankings until they actually do it. Tough to see any improvement at all. Last year they really didn't have very many bright spots at all. I think they had a win at Minnesota or something like that. But
Minnesota, they won at home.
Yeah, I think it was that game that like three of the Minnesota starters were out or something like that. But either way, I don't see Rutgers really getting out of that basement right now. But I mean, I'll give it. Right now, I'm going to say no, but I do think that they do have a couple young players coming up. They had that freshman last year whose name escapes me that
Corey Sanders
was a decent player.
Corey Sanders.
Yes, so of course Corey Sanders can come alive a little. I do think they could get maybe 13th or 12th, but they still have a pretty large talent gap compared to the rest of the Big Ten.
All right, Sean, what are your thoughts about Rutgers this year?
Yeah, so like you guys said, they went 3-33 in their first two seasons in Big Ten conference play. That led them to firing head coach Eddie Jordan. They hired new coach Steve Bickel, who led Stony Brook to their first NCAA tournament in program history last year. And, yeah, the big returners, Corey Sanders, averaged 16 points, 4 assists last year as a freshman. Wasn't very good three-point shooter, 27%, and he was not very efficient in the pick and roll. He's going to need to be able to develop that. But as you guys said, they're predicted to be last in the Big Ten, but in a matter of months, Bickel has already added some solid pieces to this struggling program. So who knows? Rutgers could be a potential dangerous team in the Big Ten in 5 or 6 years. But players need to buy into a team game, which they struggled big time in last year.
Wow, 5 or 6 years. Okay, long-term building in Rutgers. Ryan, what are your thoughts here?
Well, my first question about this is why is Rutgers in the Big Ten? But I do like the hiring Piquel from Stony Brook. I think anyone's better than Eddie Jordan at this point. Sanders and he averaged about 16 last year. I could see him stepping that up to around 18 points a game. Maybe if he improves his efficiency, decent team. They got a for. I mean, they can only go up from where they were last year. So I kind of like them to finish not dead last, but near the bottom.
Yeah, we did a writers prediction with all the writers for College Pride Press, and they ended up coming in last. So they can't get any worse, obviously. So I'm thinking they're going to be right around that 14th. I do think they will be able to steal a game here or there with Corey Sanders. He used 27% of their possessions last year, which is an awful lot. But he's the most talented guy on the team, and I think if like Ryan said, if he can improve those efficiencies, he's going to have plenty of opportunities to, potentially really carry a team for 20 minutes in the second half and be able to pull off an upset here or there. The thing that's really tough about Rutgers is they don't really have a home court advantage. When Indiana went and played there, the majority of people there were Indiana fans. So I think that's going to be tough. Last year, a team like Minnesota, they weren't very talented at all, but they pulled off a couple nice wins because of their great home court advantage, and they really utilized that. And Rutgers just does not have that right now, as they're kind of still getting acclimated to the Big Ten. So next team we have up is the Minnesota team I was just discussing. Last year they were 2-16 in conference play, and overall they were 8-23. But they did have one of the two wins was against Maryland. So that kind of tells, like I just discussed, that kind of tells you where they were. They had some nice players, but they also got beat up by a lot of the Big Ten. So we'll go back to Zach on what are your thoughts for Minnesota this year, and whether they're going to be higher or lower in the stand.
I do think they'll get a little higher, actually. I think they have a few good new players coming in. They lose Joey King, who I think was there definitely more than his 4 years of eligibility. He seems like one of those guys. But one thing with Minnesota, I'm always kind of wary of teams with off the court issues or maybe some program issues that way. And that was just a whole weird situation last year with multiple players being suspended for that one thing. So that is something that I kind of always, look at a little bit suspiciously, but they definitely have some talent on the roster, some players maturing. I think Reggie Lynch has potential to be decent if he can stay out of trouble, which I know right now he's having some issues with that. So we'll see. I think I have them finishing above 13th, but not too far. I think they still have a ways to go.
Okay, Sean, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so Richard Pitino is definitely on the hot seat. He hasn't made an NCAA tournament and he's going into his fourth year with the program. But he's depending on a talented freshman class to keep his job. 6'7" wing, Amir Coffey, can do just about anything. He was a Mr. Basketball in Minnesota last year. He's the highest recruit for Minnesota in over a decade. And Reggie Lynch, just to add to his stats, he's a 6'9" undersized center, very good at protecting the paint. He recorded 189 blocks in his first two seasons at Illinois State, which was good for second in program history, and broke the Missouri Valley Conference single-season block record as a freshman. So he'll be a presence inside. And Nate Mason, 6'1" junior guard, relied on heavily, needs to be able to hit from the field consistently. Only went 30% from three last year and 45% from two.
Yeah, I'm glad you discussed their freshmen because that's definitely going to be something they're going to have to rely on. And Richard Pitino, he's definitely going to be on the hot seat. His last name's not going to be able to carry him through multiple, bottom barrel seasons, especially in the Big Ten and Minnesota, who's had some great success as a program. Ryan, what are your thinking here? What are your thoughts on the Minnesota team? Yeah, I think Ryan's muted. So I'll kind of go ahead here and give my thoughts about Minnesota. We have them, the composite writers ranking has them at 11, and that's right where I think they'll be. I think they're going to be playing on that first day of the Big Ten tournament, which is where 11 through 14 plays. But I think they're going to have freshmen to build on, whether it's going to be, whether they're going to show enough promise to keep Pitino's job. That I'm not sure about, but they're going to be able to win a few games and be in the Big Ten, but they're not going to be a team that's going to be easy to walk over, but they're not going to be a team that you're going to be really worried about for the, coming upper echelon teams of the Big Ten. So that's kind of where I have them. I don't think they can crack into that middle tier that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. So next up, we will talk about Illinois. So I know Sean's probably going to have a lot to say here, but last year in the conference they were 5-13. Overall, they were 15-19. So the Fighting Illini, they're a very interesting team because of some of the players they have with Malcolm Hill, and they've got a great 2017 recruiting class they're building on. I know that's not this year, but talking about the program. So what are you guys thinking about Illinois last year? Finishing 12, do you think they're going to move up or move down or kind of stay the same? So we'll start off with Sean on this one.
Yeah, so they haven't made the tournament past 3 seasons, and they have talent on their team. It's just a matter of putting it all together. Like you said, Malcolm Hill, he was the best player for the Illini last year, averaged 18 points, and he's going to be relied on heavily this year too. And guy returning for, his 6th year, Tracy Abrams. He'll be back.
Yes.
Injuries have been an issue for them, and off-the-court issues. They released one of their best players, Kendrick Nunn, I think it was, this offseason. And LaRon Black almost got kicked off the team too. So they haven't gotten in trouble much lately, but if Gross underachieves this year, I think he's gone.
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility for Gross to also be on the hot seat. Zach, what are your thoughts about Illinois this year?
Yeah, like I said, I think like I said in Minnesota, I think any team that kind of has those off-the-court issues, maybe not as good control of the program as you'd like, it always makes me a little bit suspicious because Illinois does have the talent there to be a pretty good team. Malcolm Hill is a pretty solid average, around 18-6 last year. The best player on that team, and he's returning. Like we said, they have a couple solid freshmen coming in. Biggest thing for them, I think, is stay out of injury trouble. Coming into last year, I think they had at least 3 notable injuries that them right away, and it's always tough to get some momentum built when you can't really start with those key players. So for them, I think if they come into the season healthy, get a little momentum, then they're going to be a team to look out for that, can definitely squeak out some wins and maybe veer toward that middle class that we're going to talk about. But I think Gross has to get it done this year, at least show some form of improvement in terms of wins and losses, or I think he's going to be out because Illinois has that Chicago base that they can tap to recruit. So talent should not be an issue for him this year, in my opinion.
Ryan, do we have you back here? Are you ready to talk about Illinois a little bit?
Yeah. So okay. I kind of like Illinois' backcourt with Coleman Lands, Malcolm Hill, and Tracy Abrams. What they're going to struggle with is like the guys talked about earlier is staying out of injury trouble. That's been an issue the past few seasons. And then I think their front court's going to be a bit of an issue with Maverick Morgan and Fink up there. They're not great players. They're pretty good role players, but I don't know. They're probably on the lower end of that in the Big Ten. But I think this team will go as far as Malcolm Hill will take them. I could see him scoring around 20 points this year. And they will be going to be fighting to keep his job. So I think Illinois might play some more inspired basketball this year and might see them maybe crack the top 10 of the Big Ten as a ceiling. But most likely I'd say they're going to finish around 11 or 12.
Yeah, I think they're going to move up a little bit, just like Minnesota, but I don't think they're going to be in that middle tier of the Big Ten. They do have some nice pieces. Malcolm Hill is a real player. He was voted as preseason all Big Ten team, which is pretty impressive in the crop of players that are in the league this year. So he's going to be there, and he's going to be able to kind of carry them at times. But Gross is really kind of coaching for his job, and I don't know whether that's going to inspire him or it's just going to kind of make him nervous when it comes to personnel decisions and playing throughout the season. So they're going to be a team to watch. Like Minnesota, they have the capability to win games, but whether they are going to be able to put enough wins together to actually make some noise in the Big Ten, I don't really think so. Next up, we are going to be talking about Nebraska. Nebraska team we actually talked about right before we came on the air. They were 6-12 in conference play last year and 16-18 overall. They've got Tim Miles back, but they've had a couple transfers. Andrew White left and Siobhan Shields graduated. So a lot of the team that made that dramatic run into the NCAA tournament a few years back is gone. So what do you guys are thinking about Nebraska here in the Cornhuskers? We'll start it off with Ryan.
Yeah, I actually have Nebraska as my pick to finish last in the Big Ten. They got a couple decent guys in the backcourt: Watson, Webster, Anton Gillo transferred from Louisville. But what they really lack is size. And last year, I remember when they played at Assembly Hall, I think their tallest guy was like 6'8", and they just really don't have a post presence, and they're kind of one-dimensional. And yeah, I just really don't like Tim Miles at all. So I'm way down on Nebraska, especially because they lost Andrew White and Siobhan Shields is gone. Most of their scoring's gone. So more of like a rebuilding phase, I'd say, for Nebraska.
You don't like to see Tim Miles' tweets at halftime? You're not a fan of those, Ryan?
I'm not a fan.
All right, Sean, we'll get your input here about Nebraska.
Yeah, like Ryan said, I predicted them to be last in the Big Ten too. Losing Andrew White was a big blow to Tim Miles and his team. They'll definitely struggle on the offensive side of the ball because they're depending on Glenn Watson, sophomore. He showed potential last year as a freshman, but he shot 27% from three and 43% on his twos, which will hurt. And then they have a freshman front court. I think it's 6'8", Jordy Chishminga, 6'7", Isaiah Roby, Uriah Horn. They'll be dependent on to play right away. Yeah, they're just a young team. Freshmen and sophomores will see a lot of minutes. It'll definitely be a losing season for the Cornhuskers, and Tim Miles will be on the hot seat at the end of the year.
All right, I like it all. Zach, we'll have you hop in here.
Yeah, I think Nebraska's best chance in basketball this year is that the football team manages to carry out their season to high prominence bowl game to kind of distract away from it, because I really think if Rutgers doesn't finish in the bottom as the bottom team, then Nebraska is really primed to do it, because it's not even the way that they lost Andrew White. It's kind of more the manner that it happened. A good ways into the off season, and then I just get the news that he's transferring. That's never good, especially when it's your best player by far. I'm a big Taj Webster fan. I think he'll be solid this year, but Ryan said it. Their front court's just not good at all. I remember last year, at least one game that I know, I saw A.J. Hammonds go for, I think, 32 and 11. And, I mean, at that point, when you're 7 foot, I'm sure Thomas Bryant did it too. If you're 7 foot and the guy guarding you is 6'7", there's nothing you can do. So maybe they'll be okay at some parts in the offseason, but once you get into the bulk of the Big Ten, when there's tough games every game, I think they're really going to struggle.
Yeah, I think they're really going to struggle too. They really don't have one player that they can, kind of hang their hat on as someone that can carry them and kind of get points and get stops when they need it. So I don't like Nebraska at all. I think they're going to be way down this year. I think they're going to be kind of fighting with Rutgers for that 14th spot. The name to watch, though, for Nebraska, if you're watching the Nebraska game, is Jack McElvey. He came in off the bench randomly against Indiana and actually he had a nice run and made a couple threes and had a couple nice stops, but he's only 6'8", 210, so at the end of the day, he's going to have his physical limitations, but I think he's going to end up being kind of their MVP this season, just from my point of view. Next team we are going to be talking about is Penn State. Penn State's going to be a very intriguing team this year. They finished 7-11 in the conference last year and 16-16, so right at 500. But they really don't have that great of a basketball tradition. But this could be the year that changes it. They've got some great players coming back, and they've got a fantastic recruiting class coming in with Tony Carr, and they've got another Lamar Stevens, if I remember his name correctly. They got two really good players coming in to build on a young team from last year. So what do you guys are thinking about Penn State? Are you as high as them as I am? So we'll start with Zach.
I think I am as high as you are. I've always been a big Pat Chambers fan. I think he runs a tight ship there, which is kind of necessary in a place where football is definitely king. You're right. They do have a couple really good recruits coming in. I think Lamar Stevens could be a stud, like you said. With Penn State, they've always had a guy that's kind of been the guy to go to. DJ Newbill was one. Taylor Battle a few years ago. So it'll be interesting to see if one of those guys kind of emerges, or if they do finally make it more of a team effort where they don't have to continue to press that guy so hard, because it's inevitable by at some point in the season that star player is going to get worn down and you're not going to have another guy to go to. So if Patrick Chambers can get these guys playing as a team where each person knows their role very well and performs, Penn State could definitely be a team to watch out for.
Yeah, and another recruit I forgot to mention was Joe Hampton, 3-star out of Oak Hill, to go along with Tony Carr, point guard, and Lamar Stevens, who both played for Roman Catholic High School, which is in Philadelphia, if I remember correctly. IU was both recruiting those guys hard, so I'm pretty familiar with those guys. So those are their big three freshmen coming in. Sean, what are your thoughts about Penn State this year? Are they going to be higher or lower in the standings?
Personally, I like Penn State's team, especially their backcourt. Shep Garner, he averaged 15 points a game last year as a sophomore, and I think the combination of him and Carr will have them one of the top backcourts in the Big Ten this year. Carr's presence at the point will let Garner play off ball, where Garner is actually at his best. And who would have thought we'd be talking about Penn State's basketball team as a top team that could be a dangerous team for basketball in the Big Ten. I think they have a good shot at possibly getting maybe 20 wins this year. It's a kind of a long shot, but if this is the team to do it, then yeah, I think they got a good shot, and they have a tough non-conference schedule, which will give us a good feel for them. Duke, Pittsburgh, Georgia Tech, and St. John's. So if Penn State's for real, then they're going to have to prove it at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think those are all great thoughts. This could kind of be their building up year with working those freshmen in. I like your talking about Shep Gardner, definitely someone they're going to have to look out for. He played 87% of their minutes last year, which is insane, especially as a sophomore. So that was 72nd in the country as a percentage of minutes wise. So that's pretty impressive. He's going to be a guy they're going to have to rely on as they're working those freshmen in. Ryan, we'll jump to you for your inputs on Penn State.
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty intrigued by this team. I saw the other day that Pat Chambers was talking about running more up-tempo because he feels they're pretty quick and athletic team with they got some good additions. The recruiting class, Shep Garner, as you guys mentioned, still there, averaged about 15 last year, and he's poised for a pretty good year. Their biggest question mark, I think, is still going to be in the post, where it has been in the past. I think this is a team that's going to be boom or bust. I think they can have some pretty good wins, upset some teams, but I think they can also with the lower half of the Big Ten. But I'd say Penn State, they'll finish higher than where they were last year.
Yeah, I'm going – you guys really kind of hit all the bases on there in terms of new guys, returning guys, and coaching style. I think they're definitely going to be higher this year. I like where Penn State is. I think they're going to be right in that middle tier with Ohio State, Michigan, Northwestern, and Iowa. So next we'll talk about Northwestern. As I just mentioned, last year they were 8-10 in the Big Ten and 20-12 overall. They've got some good players coming back, but they did lose their big Alex Ola. So getting your thoughts on the Northwestern Wildcats. So we'll go back to Ryan. Is this the year they're going to make the tournament? Finally, is it going to be the year?
I want to say it is because I was kind of high on them last year, but I don't know. I mean, they do get Victor Law back, who was poised to have a really good sophomore season last year, but he went down. I really like him. And then McIntosh, other than him at Assembly Hall, he played pretty well, I thought, last year. If he continued his progression as a point guard, I really actually kind of like Northwestern a little bit. Their biggest question is going to be if they could fill the big body that Alex Ola was in the post, and Trey Demps is gone. Have to find someone that could shoot it. I don't know how much I actually like this team, but it's one of the more confusing teams to me. But I'd say middle of the pack, closer to the end. I think they're right around where they were last year. And then, no, they will not make the tournament.
Yeah, this is a confusing team. When I was prepping, it was weird because I remember them coming into Assembly Hall and really just kind of getting their behinds handed to them. But I'm looking at their numbers on KenPom, and they're 72nd in offensive efficiency, 87th in defensive efficiency, top 30 in turnover percentage. So they didn't really turn it over, but they limited opponents to 46% field goal wise while they shot 52%. So overall their numbers look pretty good, but it just seems like they came up short in a lot of games, and they suffered a loss to Penn State. They suffered a loss to Ohio State. They just couldn't kind of get over the hump. So they're a tough team. I don't think they're going to be able to push over, especially when losing, Demps and Ola. Those are two bigs that they're going to really struggle to adapt without. Sean, what are your thoughts here going off of what Ryan said?
Yeah, like Ryan said, McIntosh will be relied on heavily on the offensive end. I think to fill the shooting void that Trey Demps kind of displayed last year, Scotty Lindsey, he's a junior. He was 40% from three last year. He'll be dependent on to hit the three for sure. And then they have two freshmen that are actually from the Chicago area. Barrett Benson from Hinsdale South. He's the number 147th recruit in the 2016 class by 24/7 Composite. I saw him play multiple times in high school. He's got potential to be good, but he's kind of slow and seemed a little lazy at times, even with most of the players being 4 or 5 inches shorter than him. And Rapolas Ivanukas from Barrington, number 153 in 24/7 Composite. He's an underrated recruit, and he's got great potential. But I think a thing you have to talk about is that Northwestern's gained a $110 million renovation to Welsh Ryan Arena, which will definitely be a big asset to Collins on the recruiting show, which could get him a couple big recruits. And I think that the NCAA future or NCAA tournament is in their reach for sure in the next couple of years.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to ask you about Benson is I see he's listed at 6'9", 240, and 240 that's pretty thick for a freshman big coming in. Do you think he's going to be able to kind of handle the Big Ten play? He's going to have to play guys like Ethan Happ and Thomas Bryant and even Mike Thorne. There's going to be some bigs. Do you think he can match up with those guys?
I'd have to say he'll struggle his first year for sure. I really don't know how much he improved over the offseason at Northwestern, because you've seen some of like the guys at other Big Ten schools came in. We were kind of skeptical of them coming into college, but they really showed us up in their freshman year. So I think he has potential, but I don't know when he'll really realize how great he can be.
Yeah, that'll definitely be something to watch, because they're going to need him to step up to kind of cover the big men of the Big Ten, as I was just mentioning. So we'll go to Zach next and see what he has to say about Northwestern Wildcats.
Yeah, I don't think this will be the – I'm sorry. I do not think this will be the year they make it. I think the year that they do, probably a couple years down the line, will be a year when they return a couple key pieces that know where they fit. Dimps, their leading scorer, and then Alex Ola, who had been there for a while, their key big, is very tough for them, especially when I said, the Big Ten has a lot of very solid bigs. That's where they really could struggle. I'm interested to see how Vic Law does coming back. I think he's a very solid player that could turn into a 4-year guy for them, especially if he sticks there with Bryant McIntosh. I like that 1 through 3 position. Again, McIntosh, I saw him when he came to IU last year, really felt bad for him coming back home to Indiana and really did not play well at all. That being said, I think he is a very solid player that will probably be their best. So I think as they go, or as he goes, Northwestern will go. Like I said, I do not think this will quite be the year. I think they'll probably finish around the same spot. But I do think things are looking up. I think it was Sean that mentioned the renovation to the arena there. I was there a few years ago. It definitely needed it.
Yeah.
So anything they can get to help the recruiting in today's landscape is going to be a big plus. So, like I said, probably not this year, but pointing up with Collins as the head coach.
Yeah, I think it's pretty funny. Everyone seems pretty low on Northwestern because they did lose two big pieces, and high on Penn State. In our writers' composite ranking has Northwestern coming in at 9th in the Big Ten and Penn State at 10th. So I think it's pretty interesting to kind of see those two programs going in different directions, although Northwestern does have some nice pieces that they can build on with McIntosh. So next up, we will be talking about – let me get back to the – talk about Michigan. The Wolverines were 10-8 in conference play last year and 22-12, and they did make the NCAA tournament and made it to the second round, if I remember correctly. So what are you guys' thoughts on the Wolverines? We'll go right back to Zach.
Yeah, I think Michigan has the potential to be pretty solid this year. They do lose Karis LeVert, who sat out a lot of last year. It was too bad. The end of his career was pretty injury-plagued, but he was a very, very fun player to watch when he was actually playing and at his best. They add a couple recruits. Xavier Simpson is one. He was a Purdue target for a little bit, so I did watch him a little. I think he's gonna be a good player for them. He'll probably come off the bench because Derek Walton has that point guard spot kind of locked in. I think he's a very solid point guard. Maybe not quite in the upper tier in the Big Ten, but I think he has the potential to definitely move there, especially a jump shot. Robinson is a phenomenal three-point shooter. I liked watching him work. Always intelligent player, seemed to find the gaps pretty well on the court and rarely missed when he was open. Zach Irvin in his senior year is a very versatile player. I think I have them probably finishing a little bit higher than last year, and I do have them going back to the NCAA tournament. I think they have some decent veteran pieces, even losing Karis LeVert, and I think they'll be a pretty solid team.
Okay, Ryan, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I like Michigan with Walton, Irvin, Duncan Robinson, Abdur Rahman. Those four guys are, I think, a pretty good foundation. They lost, I think, 4 guys transferred and a couple coaches left, but I think they'll be fine. But once again, this is another team I see that will have deficiencies in the post where a couple more undersized guys, Donnell and Moritz Wagner. I don't think they're going to be incredibly deep at all. Maybe Simpson come off the bench. They'll have a couple nice bench players, but I don't know if they are any threat. They're definitely not any threat to winning the Big Ten, but I think when it comes around March, I'd say they're going to be on the bubble. And how seniors like Walton and Irvin play. But, yeah, I'd say right in the middle of the pack for the Big Ten.
Yeah, those are exactly my thoughts. I think they're gonna be right where they were last year. They're gonna have some nice wins, but they're gonna have some bad losses, and they're gonna end up being right on the bubble again. I'll jump to Sean real quick before we wrap up the Michigan.
Yeah, so you guys hit on all the points. I think the intriguing thing will be the battle for the 5 spot with Donnell and Wagner. Donnell, he's one of the best offensive rebounders in the Big Ten. And converted on 71% of his twos last season. And you guys hit on all the points. Michigan will find a way to score the ball this year for sure with Walton, Irvin, Robinson, Rahman. But the big thing will be defense, as we saw last year against Indiana when Indiana went on that 29-0 run. They're just going to have to buckle down on the defensive side of the ball and not have to rely as much as that on their offense. And if they do that, they could be a surprise team in the Big Ten, I think, and maybe be in that middle range and be on the bubble come March.
Yeah, I like their pieces a lot. They've got some good players, some really solid players. But unless Walton, Irvin, or Robinson really step up and become a go-to guy that can really put the team on their back, I don't think they're going to be, kind of over the top and pushing the top of the Big Ten. So I like all the points you guys made. No one mentioned Andrew Dockich, which was a complete surprise to me. I thought someone would definitely jump in there with a bold Andrew Dockich comment, but I guess we'll have to save that one for the specialized Trevor Cooney episode. So next we'll move on to Michigan's arch rival, Ohio State. Thad Matta's back. Another team that's had a ton of transfers. That last year they were 11-7 and 20-13, but they've lost a lot of guys. Jaquan Lyle, Mark Lovin are both going to be back. They're going to be their top two guys, along with another very good, not great recruiting class for Thad Matta. So what are you guys' thoughts on the Buckeyes? We'll go back to Zach on this.
They're kind of one of those teams I'm not sure what to make of. I've never been the biggest Thad Matta fan, especially as a coach. I think he's a decent recruiter that gets some good pieces there. But when it comes down to it, they just kind of looked dysfunctional last year. They had talent there. Never really quite came together. They always looked, I guess, a bit scattered, I'll say. I think Jaquan Lyle's a heck of a player. He's pretty big for a point guard, so he might be able to bully some of the other point guards in the Big Ten. Loving's a great shooter. Keita Bates-Diop definitely provides some, dynamic play for them. And they do have one pretty good recruit coming in, Derek Funderburk. We'll see where he fits into the situation, but pieces, they didn't lose as much. So I do think that they'll be kind of a middle-of-the-pack team, probably on the bubble again. Again, I think it just depends on how well they come together during the offseason, because Thad Matta, I don't think, had his best coaching job last year. They didn't finish terribly, but they definitely had more talent on their roster than their record indicated. So, again, we'll see how this offseason goes, but maybe with another year together, another year to grow as a team, they could definitely threaten in the middle of the pack there and possibly make the NCAA tournament.
All right, Sean, we'll have you jump in here with your input on the Buckeyes.
Well, Ohio State definitely has the talent with Jaquan Lyle and Jayshawn Tate, who I really like as a player. I remember last year when they played Indiana at Assembly Hall, Hoosiers blew them out, but Jayshawn Tate was like the only kind of spark of life that they had, and he's got potential to be a good player this year. And Marcus Loving, who averaged 14 points last year, is really good at getting inside and drawing fouls, and he really needs to improve his three-point shooting. He was 46% his sophomore year, and that dropped to 33%, which really hurt the Buckeyes last year because they really had no consistency from the outside. But, yeah, like Zach said, Thad Matta is a great recruiter, but in order to be a coach at the college basketball level, you got to be able to coach your team too and put the pieces together. So if Buckeyes don't make it to the NCAA tournament this year, I really think Matta's job is in jeopardy.
Yeah, I watched a number of Ohio State games last year, and your comment on Mark Loving is right on the mark, and that's a great stat because he was known as kind of the 3-point guy. He's 6'7", so he can really stretch the floor for a big. And he struggled from the outside. And Jayshawn Tate, he's a good player, but he's not going to be shooting from the outside. I think they're going to need to rely on Cam Williams more. He was somebody that shot almost 44% from three last year. He's someone that can really light it up from deep. And I watched them play against Northwestern last year, and he really lit it up. So he's going to have to be there, especially with Jaquan Lyle, who's really not that great of a shooter. He shot 25% from three, which is horrible, especially for a point guard. So they're going to need Cam Williams to step up and shoot threes and shoot a lot of them. So we'll go to Ryan here and see if he has anything to add off that.
Yeah, starting with Jaquan Lyle, I think Ohio State, they got a few pieces that I really like that have, they haven't reached their potential yet. But I think Jaquan Lyle, he'll have the ball a lot in his hands this year, so he'll probably score over 15, 16 points a game, maybe more. They got a couple of good wing players in Tate and Bates Diop. They did lose a couple of guys that transferred out of the front court after 1 year in Columbus. So I think they're another team that is going to struggle defending or scoring on the inside. I don't know how much of an impact Funderburk will make, but I don't really like Ohio State as much as I like some of the other teams we've already discussed. So I say they're going to be more towards the end of the Big Ten, and I do see this being bad amount as last year in Columbus.
Oh wow, that's pretty bold. I think they're going to fall off too. They're not going to be in the tournament for the second straight year. So Ohio State, it's going to be another long season. Hopefully their football team can play in January to keep the Buckeye fans happy. So next up, we're going to be talking about the Wisconsin Badgers, who finished 12-6 in the conference in 2012, but they did reach the Sweet 16, or they reached the Elite Eight, right? Yep, the Elite Eight. So they're a team that's returning like 99% of their scoring. Like they lost like a couple walk-ons or managers practically. So they've got almost their whole team back. A lot going on in Badgerland. So what are your guys' thoughts about Wisconsin here? We'll go back to Ryan and start it off.
Well, I've been a fan of Brunson Koenig since they made that national title run a couple years back. He really impresses me. I think him being there is good than Showalter. I think they have a very experienced backcourt, and they know they're not the most talented backcourt, but they know how to get the job done. And teaming them up with Nigel Hayes, who, if he can, his numbers weren't that great last year. If he can get his efficiency up, Nigel Hayes is one of the best players in the Big Ten.
Did we lose Ryan?
I think we lost him mid-thought.
We lost him. All right. Well, I was going to leap on what he was saying anyways. Nigel Hayes, he had a great sophomore year. His junior year was down. All the defenses were kind of focusing on him, and it kind of showed. He adjusted his shot mechanics a little bit, which was a little bit weird. But and that really hurt his efficiency, even like on open threes and free throws. He was way down in that, which was very odd. But hopefully he can kind of get those kinks worked out and kind of be used to being the main guy for Wisconsin. I think a whole offseason with Greg Gard is really going to help that team because they could have really folded once Bo Ryan left, but yet they came together and they kind of got behind Greg Gard, which was great. So they're going to be returning a lot of guys. Ethan Happ's going to develop. He's going to be a good player. Koenig's a fantastic player. And Hayes, as much of an annoyance he is with his sign at College Game Day, I think he's going to be a good player this year and have a huge impact. So we'll hop to Sean to see what he's got to say about Wisconsin Badgers.
Yeah, so this year's Badgers team is going to be a classic Wisconsin basketball team. They're not going to wow you with their athleticism. They weren't really high-ranked recruits coming out of high school. Ethan Happ, redshirt sophomore, averaged 12 points, 8 rebounds last year, and absolutely dominated games in the conference play against some of the top big men in the country. I think the key for them will be Zach Showalter, fifth-year senior, glue guy, every coach's dream. Key stat is he took a team-high 16 charges last year. I'm looking for that number to increase. I'm a big fan of the guy who loves to step in front, take a charge. And lastly, Bronson Koenig. Wisconsin's at his best when Koenig shoots the ball well from three. Defenses will want to focus on Hayes and Happ inside. And then kicking out to Koenig for that open three will be a big factor for Wisconsin this year.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you made, and the number of charges taken, very impressive stat. I love it. All right, Zach, I hope you've got a stat as impressive as that for the Wisconsin Badgers.
Man, you should have let Ryan or Sean go last because he really showed me up there. But I'm also a really big fan of this Wisconsin team. I'm a big I'm a big thinker of the winning culture matters, and they definitely could have kind of lost that after 2 great years with the terrible start last year. But Greg Gard really pulled the team together. Like Ryan said, it would have been easy for them to fold, but they kind of relied on their leaders. I think Koenig is a fantastic, not only point guard, but a great leader at that position. Kind of knows where everyone else should be, directs traffic, that sort of thing. Ethan Happ is one, as outside of Purdue, probably my favorite player to watch in the Big Ten. Kind of a old-fashioned big man with some great footwork, very skilled. Won't wow you with his athleticism, but he's the type of guy that can quietly put up, 16 and 10, and you wouldn't even notice until you look at the box score. Depth will be something that I look for them, since when you get into the top tier of the Big Ten and looking to make a run in the NCAA tournament, you're going to need guys that you can throw in, because naturally it's going to be a war of attrition at that point. So I think that still needs to be tested somewhat. Jordan Hill's a decent piece that I think could come off, but honestly, if that's their main issue, I think they're primed for a pretty good Big Ten run this year, and I think they'll finish, if not number one, then definitely that top tier, maybe the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, I'm going to even kind of enhance what Zach said. They are going to be in the running with the Hoosiers for the Big Ten championship this year. I love Wisconsin's roster. It's a great roster, great coach, great program. They've got a great home court advantage, and I'm pretty sure their schedule is very favorable for them this year, which is good, especially in this unbalanced Big Ten schedule. So I think the Badgers are going to be good. Mark your calendars down. January 21st, they're coming to Assembly Hall. That's going to be a game you're going to want to watch. It's also right before my birthday, so keep an eye on that. The Hoosiers are going to win big that night just to celebrate my birthday. So little side note there, personal stat brought to you by Brad Kreppel. Next team up, Iowa. The Hawkeyes lost a ton off of last year's roster, and they had some great wins early in the year, but really fell off towards the end. 12-6 in the conference, 21-10 overall. They've got Peter Jock as the only starter that's coming back, but they have some nice pieces that came off the bench last year that are going to have to step into some huge roles. So we'll go back to Zach on his thought about the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I definitely am not very high on the Hawkeyes this year. They had a great start to last year, surprised a lot of people, and then really just struggled down the stretch. And on top of all that, they lost, pretty much the meat of their team that really, really could damage them. I'm not a big fan of Fran McCaffrey to begin with as a coach, and he's got a hell of a coaching job in front of him this year. They do have Peter Jock coming back, who I think is a very good player. But again, I think they could struggle down low, just like a lot of teams are mentioning on this list. Dom Ewell is a guy that looked okay in some limited minutes last year, but if you're counting on him to be a key, power forward down low, I think he's going to get beat up just because he doesn't have the meat on his bones. Tyler Cook is an interesting recruit, pretty highly ranked and definitely the top 100. He adapts. If he hits that freshman wall when Big Ten play starts, again, like I said, it could be tough to get down low, or to defend down low for them, because Jared Utoff not only was a great scorer for them, but he was a heck of a defensive player. Like I said, they kind of wilted down the stretch, but for a while there, they looked like one of the best teams in the Big Ten. So it'll be interesting to see how they start out, whether Peter Jock can kind of, put them up on his shoulders, but I definitely look for them to take a big step back this year.
All right, Sean, what are your thoughts here on the Iowa Hawkeyes?
Yeah, so replacing Mike Giselle, four-year starter, I believe, will be a tough task for Fran McCaffrey. But a top candidate for that is freshman Jordan Bohannon, 6-foot guard. He was Iowa Mr. Basketball last year. 4-star recruit, not very highly recruited, and he'll get the opportunity to prove himself right away. But it'll be interesting to see how McCaffrey replaces Utoff, Clemens, Woodbury, and Giselle. It's obviously a rebuilding year, but Jock and Ewell will be a solid tandem that could give some teams troubles. But I don't really see the Hawkeyes making a tournament this year because of their experience and their lack of depth and talent.
Yeah, it's Iowa is 8th in our composite standings, behind both Michigan and Ohio State. So that kind of shows you where we think they're going to be at. They're going to be down this year. I don't think Fran McCaffrey is that great of a coach. And Dom Ewell, I think Zach kind of hit it right on the head there. He looks good in small stints, but when he really has to kind of barrel down against big guys, he really did not stand up to the task last year. So he's going to have to take some major steps forward. And Peter Jok, he didn't really have to create a lot of shots for himself last year. So that's my one concern with him. He's going to have to create for himself, for everyone. So that's going to be a tough team to watch. They're going to fall off the table. And Fran McCaffrey's sideline demeanor is going to be even worse than it was last year, which is saying something. So that is going to be like the only reason to watch Iowa basketball, is just to see how red Fran's face can get when he's on the sidelines. So next up, we will talk about the Maryland Terps. So very interesting team. Number 1 overall in the preseason last year. Really disappointing. Not a great season for Melo Trimble last year, but they've seemed to kind of clear out some of the egos they have on that team with Diamond Stone. Jake Lehman's gone, and they have Rashid Suleiman's not on the team anymore, but they have some good players with Jared Nickens coming in and Demonte Dodd that can really kind of step up. So they were 12-6 in conference play and 25-8 overall last year. So what do you guys are thinking about the Maryland Terrapins? We'll start it off with Sean this time.
Yeah, so like you said, they lost a lot. Diamond Stone, Robert Carter went to the NBA. Jake Lehman, Rashid Suleiman, who I wasn't a big fan of, graduated. But they returned Melo Trimble in what I think would be a better year for Trimble. He'll have to take over the team, scoring and playmaking. But a guy I really like is Kevin Huerter, a freshman. He's a top 100 recruit, but he was kind of under-recruited. He's a 6'7" elite shooter who will be able to play right away. But as I said before, Melo Trimble is the clear leader on this team. Wherever he goes, Maryland will go. They don't have the talent this year, but they don't have as much talent this year as they had last year. But I really think they could sneak their way into the top half of the Big Ten. I think Huerter will be a big player for them. So, and also don't forget about Demonte Dodd, 6'11" center, who will pick up the slack from Diamond Stone last year. So I think Maryland could be a dangerous team. Will they be as good as they were last year? Probably not, but I think they can make some noise.
Yeah, wasn't Demonte Dodd the starting center the year before Stone came in? I'm pretty sure he was their starting center.
Yeah,
and then Stone came in and kind of took a spot. So now it's Dodd's spot back, which is very interesting. Zach, what are your thoughts about Maryland before I give my 2 cents?
Yeah, Brad, you mentioned it earlier, but I think, they're not going to be as talented as last year. Probably good either, but sometimes getting some of those egos out can make all the difference, because I think what happens sometimes with teams like that is each player has their own future in mind, whether it's the MVP or the NBA, or, whether professional anywhere, trying to impress someone, which may have been what happened last year. We can't say for sure, but what we can say for sure is that they underwhelmed. Melo Trimble returns in what I think is a good decision for him personally. I think he has a lot more to prove at the college level. Despite what happened last year, he did fall off a little bit. I think he's a solid point guard. Going to rely this year. They don't have as much talent, like I said. Jared Nickens, I think, is an okay player. Definitely can shoot the ball fairly well. Demonte Dodd, you guys already mentioned it, but he really impressed me last year. And he definitely has the size to hold up against some of the other big guys in the league. There is a lot of improvements. One freshman we haven't mentioned yet is Justin Jackson. Fairly highly recruited. He's a 4-star as well. Pretty good minutes for the Terps. It's going to rely a lot on those 3 freshmen that they got, the 3 4-stars. Mark Turgeon did a pretty good job reloading after losing so much, but this could end up being a rebuilding year for the Terps. If rebuilding consists of them, making the top half and making the NCAA tournament, I think that could be considered success for them. That's where I see them most likely.
Yeah, I think it's going to be all about the freshmen. They're going to have to kind of take some of the pressure off of Trimble. I'm so conflicted on Noah Trimble because his freshman year, he was kind of not really expected to do much, and he played fantastically. In his sophomore year, they wanted him to stay the same, yet just kind of distribute a little bit more to some of the bigger guys they had in, and he really struggled. He couldn't shoot the ball as well, and his assist numbers were not that great. So I don't know what to expect from Trimble. It's going to be an interesting year. They could be in the top 4 of the Big Ten. They could be down low with Penn State and Michigan. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Trimble plays and how Jared Nickens plays. I think he could be another key piece to this team that not really everyone's talking about. Do we have Ryan back on the line here?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have something to say about Maryland before we move on?
Yeah. Well, Brad, you know my Trimble, and now that he lost 4 starters with him last year?
Yes.
He still has. I think they get Deion Wiley back. He's got Nickens. They got a Herder.
Yeah, Herder. We've mentioned the recruits.
Yeah. I don't see them. Well, I still think Mel Trimble's overrated, and the guy win you games off with him alone. He's still a good player. He's just not as hyped up as they. I don't see anything here that can make Maryland, to me, maybe more of a bubble tournament team. Right around 8 or 9 in the Big Ten, in my opinion. I don't think Turgeon's a great coach either. I think they're going to have some struggles throughout the year, and I maybe just an average year for them up in College Park.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was picturing as their floor, but I can also see freshman Noah Trimble kind of finding himself again with kind of him being the main man there. So that'll be very interesting. They're kind of one of those swing teams in the Big Ten. Next up, the Purdue Boilermakers, who are going to lose to Rutgers throughout the season, just so I can give Zach a bunch of crap for it. I could only dream. But kidding aside, they went 12-6 last year and 26-8 overall. So they have to replace A.J. Hammonds, but they have a good core coming back, and they've got a nice freshman, Carson Edwards, coming in to join the transfer Spike Albrecht. So we'll let Zach start this one off because I know he's got some big rant planned.
Yeah, I better get all the positives in while I can because the listening audience is not going to hear much else positive coming from these 3. But all that aside, it will be interesting to see how Purdue replaces A.J. Hammonds, who's one of the better big men, and not only in the Big Ten but the country last year. Was a guy that they always could rely to. If the shot clock wound down a little bit, didn't know where to go, you could always find AJ to get one of his jump hooks or at least kick it into him, and they collapse down. You can kick it out. It'll be interesting to see because they have a fellow 7-footer on the roster, Isaac Haas, who is not nearly as athletic or mobile as AJ Hammonds, but is definitely a force to be handled in the paint. He weighs close to 300 pounds, if I remember correctly, which once you get down low, if he establishes, it's very tough to guard him. Not many players in the country that can. The key will be his durability. Obviously, with a player that big, it's going to be tough to rely on him to run the court for 25, 30 minutes a night. So it'll be interesting to see if he can't do that, then who steps in. Matt Painter, the coach, kind of indicated that returning sophomore Caleb Swanigan, who was pretty solid last year, inefficient at times, but definitely a good talent, would fill the 5 spot when Isaac Haas was out. He's possibly a little undersized for that. Like I said, that remains to be seen. But the point is the front court still seems to be in pretty good hands at Purdue, which is nice because that's where their bread and butter is. Also in the front court, I think their best overall player is Vince Edwards. He's very versatile, kind of a jack of all trades. Really improved his shooting last year, just in terms of his shot form too. His freshman year, it always kind of looked a little goofy.
put a lot of work in last year and gets a shot up nice and clean with a quick release now, which is something that could be very good if their three-man could shoot from the outside. Two big additions coming in, Carson Edwards, who is a four-star point guard, more of a combo guard actually, but he's a very good shooter, very quick off the dribble. It'll be interesting to see. I doubt he gets the reins day one in terms of who starts a point guard, but he will be a guy that will definitely play his role as the season progresses because he's very quick. I think he'll be able to get around a lot of people, and I think he'll be one of the more surprising additions in the Big Ten. Ryan, I'm not going to talk about Dakota Mathias because I think he's the only player you like on the team, so I'll let you mention him, but that's about all I got, Brad.
All right, we'll throw it over to Ryan then. See if he's going to pick up that Dakota Mathias drop you had for him.
Yeah, well, in my estimations, the go-to guy this year for Purdue, option to score, I think, has got to be Dakota Mathias, Midwestern Cowboy. By the way, he kind of caught my heart a little bit, and I'm a fan of his game. If the so-called Purdue basketball savior, Carson Edwards, can indeed be that savior at the point guard. I don't know enough about him to make any judgments. I've heard he's been looking good so far. Then you still got Biggie Swanigan and Haas. You got the big guys down low. I don't know what they're planning on doing with that, or they're going to have them both start, I assume. You still got P.J. Thompson potentially running the point. I do like Vince Edwards, pretty all-around type player. He key in providing some leadership for Purdue. And but I'd like Zach was talking about earlier, I think it's going to depend on how durable Haas can be down low and if he can clean up his fundamentals a little bit and keep progressing from the first 2 years there to see how. But I'd say Purdue. I'd say they're in the edge of the tier one, right? They're probably in contention with the.
All right, I like those thoughts a lot. We'll throw it over to Sean for his statement.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to mention or not to mention how Purdue had a very good year last year. They were ranked as high as 9 and eventually lost to Michigan State in the Big Ten title game. And then we all know they lost to Arkansas Little Rock in the first round. I think what will be really intriguing to me this year is how Matt Painter handles the point guard situation. As we know, he has P.J. Thompson coming back, Carson Edwards, and also Spike Albrecht, transfer from Michigan, who we saw absolutely torch Louisville in the first half in the national championship a couple years ago. But it's been kind of quiet recently with that injury. And I think that's going to be an interesting situation over there in West Lafayette. And the two guys I really liked that Ryan mentioned was Dakota Mathis, very good at shooting the deep ball, and Ryan Klein is personally my favorite player in the Big Ten that's not from Indiana. He had one good game last year, like at Pitt or something like that. But I think he'll break out this year and be just stand in the corner, and the guards will be able to create for him, and he'll be a pest on the perimeter for sure.
Wow. Okay, I was gonna kind of come back at your comment about Klein saying that he only had one good game, but you already kind of said that yourself. So I like what you guys said about Haas and his durability. I think the other concern I'm going to have about him is he going to be able to stay on the floor? Because his first 2 years, they kind of brought him off the bench for a few minutes here and there, and they really did not have that much foul trouble with either one of those guys. So I don't know how he's going to be able to play. I think teams are going to go after them. If I was a coach, I would go after Haas. He's not as athletic, so if he goes for a block shot and misses, you could draw 2 quick fouls on him in the first couple of possessions and really kind of get into them playing small with Swanigan and Vince Edwards. I do think Vince Edwards is a fantastic player. So, freshman year, Haas had 5.9 fouls per 40, sophomore year 4.6, so it improved. He's going to have to kind of keep that up if he wants to kind of pick up some bigger minutes, because he only played 14 minutes last year and averaged 2 fouls a game. So he's going to have to pick that up if he wants to double his minutes and his production, which Purdue's deadly is really going to need. Their guard situation is very unique. PJ Thompson was good in some stretches and bad in some stretches last year. So I think he can kind of grow, and Spike Albright is going to come in, and no one really knows what they're going to get from him. And they also have Carson Edwards. So they've got just kind of a mishmash of guards that they're really going to have to sort out and kind of get roles for everyone before they settle in. They do play Villanova, if I remember correctly. They play Villanova in the non-conference, which is going to be a pretty interesting game. So that's going to be a good game to watch, especially because Villanova is really not going to have any good big guys to match up against Haas and Swanigan. So that's going to be kind of the game to watch for Purdue in the non-conference that I'll keep an eye on for their barometer. I like what Ryan said, that they're going to be, right outside that top tier of Big Ten teams. So they're going to be kind of, top of the second tier, bottom of the first tier. Just depends on if Haas can stay on the court and how they kind of sort out those guards. The next team we're going to talk about, the Michigan State Spartans. We got 2 more teams. Michigan State went 13-5 in conference last year, 29-5 overall. As everyone knows, they lost to Middle Tennessee in the first round when basically everyone in the world had them in the Final Four, which is pretty funny. But this is going to be a completely different Michigan State team. No Denzel Valentine. No Brian Costello. Travis Trice has been gone for a few years now. It's going to be a different team. Some freshmen are going to be coming in that are going to be, that are going to have to kind of pick up the ropes right away and pick up that Michigan State culture. Miles Bridges, Joshua Langford, Cassius Winston. They got some big names coming in that are going to have to pick up and play well. So I'll kind of kick it off to you guys. Ryan, we'll let you start on Michigan State.
Yeah, actually, I really like this Michigan State class that they got like 4 top 50 guys, I think, in the rankings. But I really like – I know you're skeptical on him, but I really like Miles Bridges. So I think he'll be a force to be reckoned with starting from the first game. And then I really like Aaron Harris, who's the West Virginia transfer, second year here. I like him as if he can step into that leadership role that Denzel had last year. Him putting up some pretty numbers, and he'll definitely be the leader that all the young guys look to out there. For the post play and energy that Matt Costello brought to the state in the past is going to be their guy now. I think down low with him and Schilling, but we'll see how those guys can. And overall, it's going to be give a great prediction on them, but they're definitely be at the top of the Big Ten. Just how well Izzo has them playing by March is going to be the key there for them.
Yeah, I think you got it right that it's going to be a different team in the beginning of the year than the end of the year. So Izzo's going to have to grow this team. Sean, what do you have to say here?
I mean, I'm pretty sure we're all aware of how Tom Izzo and Michigan State has had success in the past couple of years. But what's scary to me is that this freshman class is the highest rated class that Izzo has had at Michigan State. And that just says a lot about the potential that this team has. Miles Bridges, Josh Langford, Cassius Winston, Nick Ward, they all make impacts right away. And then Aaron Harris, who will be a major key for this team. We scored 9 points last year a game, shot 44% from 3. And this team is going to be challenged very early. November 11th, they play Arizona and Hawaii. 15th, 4 days later, they go to New York to play Kentucky. And then after that, they go to the Bahamas, where they could play St. John's, Baylor, VCU, and Louisville or Wichita State. But if I have Coach Izzo as my team or as my coach, I wouldn't feel worried at all, because I know he's going to have this team ready for March and put together a brutal non-conference schedule that'll help this team come Big Ten time.
I like it a lot. Zach, we'll hop it over to you here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think 3 Big Ten teams that finished near the top, and actually one at the top, IU losing Yogi Ferrell, which we'll talk about next. Michigan State losing Valentine, and then Purdue losing A.J. Hammond. All 3 of them are kind of in a position where they have to find a way to replace a very key 4-year guy. If there's one team that's equipped to do it, obviously IU, Purdue both have the talent to do it, but Tom Izzo, I think, is one of the more proven coaches in college basketball history. He's always been known for getting the most out of his guys, even when he may not have the most talented team. Now that he has maybe the most talented team in the Big Ten, it's kind of scary just because if all those guys hit their potential and can be clicking by the time March comes, then you got to watch out for an Izzo-led team. I'm with Ryan. I like Miles Bridges more than Brad does. I think he's very versatile. I think Izzo knows how to use his players, plays his players to the best of their ability. So that could definitely help with his transition to the college game. One guy we haven't mentioned yet is Tum Tum Nairn. Struggled with some injury last year, which led to Valentine taking over the point guard role, which he did phenomenally well. But I do think Nairn is a pretty solid point guard that could definitely lead the team on the offensive side. Aaron Harris is another guy, like Ryan said, that is a very good scorer, can get to the rim, can hit some outside shots. I think he could be their go-to scorer if some of the freshmen get the deer in the headlights look. Aaron Harris could definitely take over a game at times. So I would not be too worried if I was a Spartan fan, simply because of the talent on the roster. I think the key for them is to not panic if there is a bit of a slow start, just because everyone's getting to know each other's game, that sort of thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm anticipating one, because I do think Izzo, like I said, maybe the best coach in the Big Ten, if not the nation. I think they'll be a fun team to watch this year, and we'll definitely challenge for that Big Ten title.
All right, you guys all saw this Miles Bridges rant coming, and you know it's coming. So I'll give you an abbreviated version, but everyone's high on Miles Bridges. I'm not. I don't think he's got the jump shot to have it respected the Big Ten level, and his athleticism at 6'6" just isn't going to be up there. He's going to have to play more on the wing than he's used to, so it's going to be an adjustment for him. But he's going to make some fantastic plays. He's going to make some great dunks, but I just don't see the whole package being there right now. Tum Tum Nairn, I think that's great. Him and Harris are going to have to lead that team. I was going to bring up Harris shooting 40% from 3, because they did lose Bryn Forbes and Valentine, who both shot 44 and 48% from 3. So that's pretty impressive. They're going to have to replace that shooting. But Tom Izzo, I think they're going to get beat up pretty bad in the non-conference, but I think Tom Izzo is going to have them playing right when the timing's right, because I don't think that Arizona game is in Hawaii, so they don't play really at home in any of their big non-conference games. So look for them to kind of hit their stride when they can finally play some home games and get that crowd involved in East Lansing. And finally, the Indiana Hoosiers, the Big Ten champs from last year, 15-3 in conference play, 25-7 overall. They didn't make the Sweet 16, but they did lose Yogi Ferrell, big point guard, 4-year player. It's going to be a really tough loss for them. What are you guys thinking about Indiana? We'll let Zach start, because then we'll clean up with the Indiana guys.
Yeah. With IU, like I said, it's always tough when you lose a 4-year guy, especially one as important as Yogi Ferrell, at the point guard position, no less. But I would not be super worried as an IU fan. It might take a little bit, but there's so much talent on this roster, and I think all the pieces fit together pretty dang well. Thomas Bryant is a guy that I think could challenge for Big Ten Player of the Year. He'll be a top pick in the draft if he declares after his sophomore season, one of the top 15, whatever. I like his game a lot. I think when you think of Ethan Happ for Wisconsin, he's got the footwork. Thomas Bryant has a similar mind for the game. I think he's a very smart player. But I think he has an element of a little more athleticism than Ethan Happ maybe. I look for his intelligence to improve even more as he moves to his sophomore season. Maybe knows his place a little more, how he fits into the college game. I think the biggest question for IU comes at the point guard position. Like I said, Yogi Ferrell has been manning that point since his freshman year, all the way back with Cody Zeller, Victor Oladipo, those guys. So it's going to be kind of new territory for Tom Crean and figuring out how he's going to do that. There are a couple candidates. Josh Newkirk, a Pitt transfer who sat out last year, could be that guy. Robert Johnson is definitely a potential candidate. He's a great shooter, so that'd be a different kind of dynamic to have at that position. But a guy that I haven't mentioned yet is James Blackman coming back from injury. Great offensive player. It'll be interesting to see if he has improved on the defensive side at all. It didn't affect IU as a team as much as I think some would like to believe when he was on the court in terms of defense. But if he can even, fix that just a little bit, I think we'll see a vast improvement in IU's defense from last year to this year. And if their offense could remain the same, then that's a team you really got to watch out for. I'll leave a few of the players to you guys so you can talk about them, have some fresh content to discuss here. But that's kind of my take on them. I think, we mentioned earlier, but I think they'll be right up there with Wisconsin, Michigan State, and maybe Purdue if they can get it going. But I think the top three for sure in terms of fighting for that Big Ten championship.
All right, Sean, we'll hop over to you to see what you have to say.
Yeah, well, actually, before this podcast, I was watching the Indiana practice that they recorded yesterday on BTN. And some of the guys that I really was that caught my attention was Juwan Morgan. As we know, he played in limited minutes last year, my bad. It seemed as if every time he came in, he provided that energy spark that the Hoosiers really needed when they were gave up a big run or something like that. I think he'll step up big with the Colin Hartman injury, which we still have no idea what's wrong with him. And another guy that everyone loves, OG Anunoby, he looked a lot more comfortable out there. I mean, he looked comfortable last year, but he looked a lot more comfortable at the practice. The one thing he had to improve on last year was his ability to put the ball on the floor in his three-point stroke. He looked a lot better in the scrimmages and in the drills, and I think he'll be a star this year. And Rob Johnson, I think, is going to be the guy that steps up and takes over Yogi Ferrell's role from last year. Shot 45% from three last year. The only issue with him is that he needs to stay healthy, and he's turnover prone on offense. And a guy that I know you love, Brad, Devontae Green, watched him in practice today too. He really impressed me. I really had no idea. I didn't know anything about him really before he committed to IU this past spring. But I think he'll be a guy that sneaks into that rotation and could be a big contributor come conference play. And this team is going to be challenged early for sure, Kansas and Louisville. I'm missing one other, but the thing that IU really has to find this year is the guy. The guy last year, Yogi Ferrell, as we know. And we need someone who's going to create when called upon like Yogi did last year. So if they find that, I feel as if IU has a real good shot at being a Final Four team and winning the Big Ten for sure.
I love it. I love the Devontae Green pitch there. You know I'm all about that. Ryan, we'll go to you, and then I'll clean up.
Yeah, so Sean was talking about how IU needs to find that guy that they can give him the ball and he can go to work and get a bucket when they need him to. And this year, I think it's going to be James Blackman. Finally see the 5-star McDonald's All-American that he was out of high school, but coming off another knee injury, he's been saying in some of his interviews that he's feeling better than he has, and I think him going to the NBA and getting that then was huge because I think what they definitely told him was that he's not going to be playing in the NBA if he doesn't work on his defense. So I kind of feel like Blackman will play with a chip on his shoulder this year, and he'll be much better defender, and his offense will still be there. And obviously you got Thomas and OG front court. I'm not worried about them. They're going to cause havoc up there all year. They're definitely lottery picks this year. One of my really like is Curtis Jones. He's kind of like a Blackman player. He's a little thin, but he's been putting on some muscle, and he can just stroke it lights out. Pretty athletic. He can finish. And I like him along with Freddie McSwain, who looks like should be playing tight end in the NFL. But the main thing about him is that I think they're too deep at every position, and maybe even deeper than that. I think they could see 10, 11, 12 guys playing in each game, depending on the situation. So I'm really excited to see what IU has this year. It should be a good year.
All right, I like that a lot. I'm going to kind of start it off with – I'm going to kind of split it my portion into two. The uglies first, and that is Yogi's gone, and all the returning guards are coming off of injury. Even the transfer Josh Newkirk's coming off injury. Blackman had surgery. Robert Johnson had surgery. Nick Zaisoff is gone. And that group was pretty thin last year at the end. So that's kind of tough. And the freshman guards are coming in too, and they're trying to get acclimated. But I think the good thing is the Tom Crane offense is not really all about, having one guy bring it up. And he even mentioned it in a couple interviews. It's going to be whoever's closest. They're going to have, a couple guards out there and just kind of push the ball up the court. And it's not going to be, we have to give it to one guy and let him come up and set the play and start the offense in motion. So I think it's going to kind of be by committee, which is going to be good because there's a lot of talent there. And I think it's going to be really fun to watch. Yogi's junior year, the beginning, they started to run a lot of that. Even with Robert Johnson, James Blackman as freshmen, they started kind of running where Blackman or Johnson would bring the ball up and Yogi would run through screens to kind of get open for threes to kind of alleviate the pressure. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that just to kind of bring it around and open up some holes and spaces for everyone. I love that Zach mentioned Jawan Morgan. He is someone that is flying way under the radar with OG Anunoby's on all these NBA mock drafts and all this and this. And I think Jawan Morgan is going to be an absolute warrior this year. He's a rebound monster. He makes the right play, and he showed the ability to make three-pointers last year. And I think if he can get some consistency on that, he's going to be a really good player this year. And everyone mentioned Devontae Green, Danny Green's little brother. I think he's going to be a really good defensive player, and I think this team, with all their offensive firepower, is going to need someone that can come in and kind of lock down someone on the perimeter, especially because Blackman's kind of a liability out there. So they can bring in Green to pair along with Blackman, and that could be a kind of good defensive duo there. I'm real excited about kind of seeing this team. They have the new assembly hall is going to be opening, so hopefully the home court advantage will be good for the Hoosiers. And I think they're going to be right along with Wisconsin and Michigan State at the top of the Big Ten. It's going to be really fun to kind of watch these teams battle it out as it was last year. Last year was a blast with Iowa and Michigan State at the top. So I think it's going to be really fun to watch. Next, we are going to kind of go into a little bit different mode to kind of wrap up and talk about your predictions for Player of the Year and then Coach of the Year. So we'll start with Player of the Year. I'm not going to give my pick yet. I'm going to let Ryan give his first before I declare mine.
This one might sound like a bit of a surprise, a little bit of a hot take I've been thinking up here lately. But I think Big Ten Player of the Year is going to be James Blackman Jr. He's going to turn his defensive game all the way around and get it to where it needs to be a good defender in the Big Ten. And I think he's going to average close to 20 points a game. And he's going to really come into his own as a leader, as well as his shooting abilities. And he can – that's where it is. I definitely think he can be Big Ten Player of the Year.
All right, Sean.
Mine, I'm kind of stuck between two players, Nigel Hayes, Thomas Bryant. But I think Nigel Hayes is going to take this one. I think he's going to have a Frank Kaminsky-type senior year and improve his draft stock drastically. He's going to be the go-to guy on this Badger team. And I think if he's going to have a great year, the pressure's kind of on him, but I think he'll take that pressure and just run with it and put a great year together with the Badgers.
Wow. Okay. Very interesting. Zach? I think Zach has us on mute. Okay. I'll give my pick, and it is Tim Priller. No, I'm just kidding. That would be very interesting. But my pick is going to be Ethan Happ, actually. I think he's going to have a big year, and I think I kind of smirked at Sean because it's funny that I'm picking somebody else on Wisconsin as Big Ten Player of the Year, which kind of shows you how deep the league is, that we have different picks on the same team for Conference Player of the Year. So that's very interesting. I think Ethan Happ, he was really good last year, and he carved up Thomas Bryant, and he made Thomas Bryant look like a 2-star prospect. It was ugly to watch, and I think Happ's going to do that to the whole league this year. Especially, he's going to have a whole year to kind of get that Greg Gard style of play, that system down, and I think he's going to have a huge year this year. So now we'll go back to Zach for his Big Ten Player of the Year.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't want to intrude on your guys' Indiana talk, so I muted it. My bad. But Brad kind of took my thunder there. I was going to take Ethan Happ too. I think he's a very solid player. Like I said, maybe not the most spectacular, but I think he's in there when it counts. Obviously, I'm not saying he's Tim Duncan, but I think he's more in that mold, and that he gets down, does the dirty work, scores when he needs to, and that could be undervalued in today's game. But I think he'll put up the stats. I think that Wisconsin will have the team quality in terms of wins to propel him to that Player of the Year candidacy. Just for the record, you three, you guys, Thomas Bryant would be my second pick there. So.
All right. I thought you were going to jump in with a Daryl Hazel for the Big Ten Player of the Year pick, but
of course, second only to John Shoup there. So
I like it. So next we're gonna wrap up with the Coach of the Year, which I know Zach's already got Fran McCaffrey penciled in. So I'll just let him confirm that pick right now. Start it off.
Fran McCaffrey, of course. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually going to go Tom Izzo on this one. I think that if he manages, which I predict he will, to have a maybe top 3 team in the Big Ten after getting a whole new crop of players, losing not only Denzel Valentine, as I mentioned, but Bryn Forbes was a very solid piece for them, along with Matt Costello. I think if he brings all that together successfully, it will be one of his best coaching jobs. And I think he is primed for that, Coach of the Year award.
All right, Sean.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going with my Wisconsin thing here. So I'm gonna go with Greg Gard, and we all saw what happened last year. They started 9-9 or something like that, and then Bo Ryan left midseason, and Gard led them to a Sweet 16. I think he's gonna carry off that big run in the NCAA tournament and surprise finish in the regular season. And Wisconsin's going to be a team to watch this year, consistently in the top 10, I think, and could be a good title, or it could come down to the last day of the season in the Big Ten for the conference title. But I think Gard will definitely be the Coach of the Year.
All right, I like that a lot. Ryan, what's your pick here?
Mine's actually going to be Pat Chambers.
Oh, my
Penn State. I don't know. I was watching it. I watched a little bit of his media day talking, and he talked about how he wanted to run up tempo and how this is the most confident group of guys he's seen since he's been there. And they do have some talent with some incoming recruits and Garner, who's still there. I think they're going to be pretty exciting, actually, and maybe they'll get more than 100 fans to attend their games. But I kind of like him to lead Penn State. Penn State might have a shocking year. I'd say they could come in like 6th or 7th in the Big Ten, and I think right there is a big win for Penn State program. And I do like Pat Chambers as the coach of the year in the Big Ten.
Wow. Okay. Well, you guys are stealing my thunder, except for Zach. I was gonna go Greg Gard with a very close second, Pat Chambers. I think Greg Gard, he's gonna lead that team, and I mean that team's gonna be pretty good and put his Wisconsin touch on it, and it'll be great. And Pat Chambers, I think he's gonna finally put that team together and make something out of the Nittany Lions. Make some noise there, which will be fun. It'll be fun for a competitive Penn State team to be in the Big Ten this year. So I like Pat Chambers a lot. So those are kind of our picks. If they're horribly wrong, I will be calling out people on Twitter. So just keep that in mind, Zach. If you want to change any picks, you'll have your closing comments to do that. But we'll let you guys kind of just swing through with your closing remarks, and then we will wrap it up here because we're getting to a 1 a.m. on the East Coast due to a Cubs game delayed podcast. So we'll let Zach wrap it up here quick.
Yeah, just know, Brad, that if that calling people out works both ways. So we'll see how it goes for you too.
Oh, I already know. Giants in 5. All right.
Giants in 5, of course. But no, I'm looking forward to a great basketball season. I think the Big Ten's a great deep conference. But I'm sure we'll have some other conference previews coming up too, because there's great basketball all across the country, and it's definitely a great time of the year, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, I like it a lot, Sean.
Yeah, I'm just excited for this season to finally get underway. The Bears kind of disappointed me this year. Indiana football has been a surprise to me, but yeah, hopefully I can take a visit to IU next weekend and see Hoosier Hysteria. So I'm excited for that, Sean.
Now is that an unofficial visit or an official visit?
I haven't had all my official visits scheduled yet, but
okay. All right.
Yeah.
We'll have to update our big board when we get there.
Spring signing period.
All right.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, Ryan, we'll get you last.
Yeah, I'm extremely excited for this. This is the best coming up on the best time of the year in sports, in my opinion. And next weekend we got Hoosier Hysteria. Looking forward to going there, checking out the new Assembly Hall. From the pictures I've seen, it looks pretty sweet. And I have November 11th circled on my calendar for since the schedules came out. That'll be in Hawaii against Kansas. So I guess I'll just be counting down the days till that and go Hoosiers.
Yeah. Hopefully that goes a little better than the last time IU went to Hawaii, which can't go much worse. So
we don't play well in other countries, okay? That's what everyone said.
Yeah.
Hawaii's not a real state.
I love it. Zach mentioned, it's been great talking Big Ten. Keep an eye out. Sometime this week, we will be doing an A10 preview podcast with the famous Alex Handorf, which will always live up to the hype. Anytime Alex Handorf's involved in anything, it is definitely worth a download. So be sure to look out for that coming this week. But Big Ten's going to be exciting. College basketball is going to be exciting. I can't wait to get underway. Thanks to Ryan, Sean, and Zach for joining me and talking on this late Sunday night. It's been a real pleasure.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.